All right, so thanks for joining today's webinar. I'm Bryan Sarpad. I'm a sales engineer here at phoenixNAP. And Brandon McCoy from Veeam has joined us as well. He can speak to Veeam's technology. So who's phoenixNAP? We are a global IT services provider, infrastructure as a service provider. We own and operate a data center in Phoenix, Arizona. We have space in 14 other locations around the world, very robust global network, DDoS protection built in at all our nodes. We're offering DR at multiple sites across the world. Phoenix, Ashburn, Amsterdam, Singapore, and Chicago. And we have a very robust team of technicians and engineers available 24/7 to help with general purpose colocation, bare metal servers, as well as all our cloud services ranging from multi-tenant clouds to fully dedicated managed private clouds. We're a big VMware shop, and we've been partnering with Veeam for several years and are generally one of the first service providers to offer their latest and greatest offering. Here's a map of our actual locations. In Phoenix, Arizona, we're actually Amazon's direct connect location. We're the only one in the state of Arizona. So you can co-locate with us and get cross connect and have direct access into their network. And we have private transport between all these locations, so we're able to stretch our layer 2 network and really offer some very robust services at a very low cost. All right, so we're going to start with high availability definition. As you can see here, it's really about the uptime of your business application. And what really makes high availability? It ranges anywhere from backup and replication to the actual infrastructure you're hosting on. All our cloud services are designed with high availability from every single perspective, from the network layer, storage, host configurations. Everything is designed to achieve maximum high availability at a very low cost for you. And why do people need high availability? As I'm sure you're well aware, if you're joining this webinar, it can impact your business and your bottom line. If your business application goes down, you're typically finding yourself with all your employees that you're paying for with nothing to do. So it's quite critical to think about it ahead of time and try to mitigate any risk and ensure your business application is always available. And we're going to talk about how to achieve that with some of our infrastructure solutions, as well as how to leverage Veeam to achieve high availability. Let's see. So this was a recent Spiceworks survey of North American companies, and as you can see, most organizations have had downtime in the past year. Most organizations have actually had more than one event, and some have even suffered repeated failures, and you can only imagine the cost to their business. Some common causes of outages, power outages. Are you hosting on-prem? Do you have generators? How many substations is there power fed from? So it goes a little bit deeper than that too. So down at the rack level, what kind of redundancy do you have inside the data center? Are you fed from proper 2-in power sources, meaning your UPS, your generators are actually redundant, not just 2 different power outlets being plugged into a server. It's pretty common that people will get colocation and get what's kind of referred to as redundant receptacles or power distribution, but it's not actually true two-in. So it's something good to make sure your service provider is offering. Connectivity issues. So how are you handling your network connectivity to the rest of the world or to your actual infrastructure, your intranet? Are you using a single service provider, or are you running your own BGP and potentially picking up multiple carriers and configuring them in a redundant manner? Hardware failure. So a lot of servers have redundant power supplies, but that kind of goes back to the power outages. Is your hardware being configured in a redundant manner? One common way of doing that is picking up true two-in power, putting half your servers on the A side, half your servers on the B side, and doing the same with your network infrastructure, getting switches, a pair of switches, and making sure they're on two-in power. Third-party vendor issues. So that's, are you using some sort of custom software that may not have been thoroughly tested? A number of different reasons that can happen. Human error. So this is a common one. Do your employees have access to some critical infrastructure, and perhaps they're not running the best antivirus they should be, and some sort of malware slips in? What are you doing to prevent that? Natural disasters. This is one we actually encounter pretty frequently. Being in Arizona, we're a disaster-free state for the most part, and we have people that often reach out to us when there's a hurricane, or even last year, California with the wildfires. So thinking about those things ahead of time and making sure you have a backup plan is very critical. So we're going to talk about some ways to achieve high availability. What do your business applications do? Do you have an inventory of all those applications? Do you know how all those applications need to work with each other? Not from just a logical application perspective, but a network. Is that documented? Do you know which of those applications are mission critical? Have you gone through and done the exercise of associating a downtime cost with those applications to prioritize which ones need to be up at all costs? Step 2, have you defined how much downtime you can sustain? So in the event of a disaster, the RTO, the recovery time objective, and RPO, recovery point objectives, they're pretty critical. So do you know how fresh the data needs to be? That's going to affect your RPO goals. And again, how much downtime you can sustain is going to affect your recovery time objectives. And here's just a little graphic that visualizes this. So again, RTO, the amount of time needed to recover, and RPO, the how current your data is when you're recovering it. So step 3, what's your infrastructure look like? Do you have multiple web servers? Are you load balancing between them? Are you doing any sort of external tests to ensure that you're meeting internal or external SLAs? What kind of storage are you using? Are you using local storage? If you are you using, what RAID level are you using? Is that going to actually achieve the redundancy you need? Okay, so step 4, finding the right provider. When you're evaluating disaster recovery providers, there are many different things that might be critical to your business success. So always a good idea to sit down with everybody involved, the team that would have to actually perform the recovery, and ensure you're having everybody express what they need to achieve recovery in a disaster event. and then bringing that to your vendors and evaluating them and making sure that they can actually meet those goals. And step 5 is actually deploying DR as a service. So when you do that, do you have a tested plan? Are you able to test that failover with a provider before an actual event occurs? How much, when you actually have a failover event, how much do you have to pay when you're recovered? A couple different things, but testing is very critical, and understanding the costs associated with a failover event are very critical as well. And with phoenixNAP, our Veeam-based solutions, we offer a week of free failover. So we want to get you back up and running as soon as possible. And then it just turns into a normal cloud production workload. And we offer a free failover test a year. Let's see. All right. So now I'm going to hand it over to Bryan to speak a little bit about Veeam's backup and DR solutions.
Thanks, Bryan. I appreciate that. And thanks, everyone, for joining us today, taking some time out of your busy day. So try to keep this brief. We're really talking about disaster recovery as a service today. Of course, there's also backup as a service, and I may briefly touch on that. But we really want to focus today on those critical Tier 1 applications where you don't have the affordability to be down, right? Every minute that a machine is down, you could be losing money. So you need to have those Tier 1 applications ready to go and powered on. And that's exactly what Cloud Connect, Replication, and phoenixNAP together can provide for you. So phoenixNAP offers any kind of integration with Veeam version 9 and above, which right now we're on 9.5 update 4. Of course, you should always be on the latest and greatest to get all the cool features that we offer. You can have your disaster recovery site up and running very, very quickly. Bring your network with you, or we can kind of do that on the fly. We have something called failover plans that will assist you with NAT translation and port forwarding so that you can reach those machines once they are in phoenixNAP's data center. And speaking of phoenixNAP's data centers, they have 4 different locations all across the globe, so you can decide where you want your data to live. And we have support for VMware vSphere. We're always pretty much right up to date, 6.7 update 3, so we can always support you in any of those VMware solutions. But let's take a step back for a second. I just want to quickly introduce Veeam and kind of brag a little bit here. Whoops. No, next slide, please. Thanks. So just kind of taking a look at these numbers, some global 2000, some Fortune 500 customers. We're not a small shop. We've been around for a while now. But my favorite stat here is the Net Promoter Score on the bottom right, and plus 73. This is actually double the industry average, and it's not on a scale of 0 to 100. It's actually on the scale of like a negative 100 to a positive 100. And this is just satisfaction, whether or not customers are happy with Veeam, whether they would recommend it to their friends. And I encourage you to go out and look on Reddit and other various websites and forums outside of Veeam to see how good Veeam is and how much people love the product. When we talk about Veeam, I like to think of Veeam as an availability platform. The word availability has always been kind of stamped into Veeam's marketing, and we've kind of changed our marketing here and there, but data being available has always been kind of a key thing. And recently there was a motto that says, we want to back up any app, any cloud, any data, and that's kind of what this visualization here is showing you. So I know it looks like a whole smorgasbord of different products, and we don't want to just put a product to each different solution that you're looking for. We want to kind of give you one integrated solution. And while there are some products of Veeam that don't integrate with others, we are working to kind of merge those, and we want you to have fewer interfaces to work out of. So everything from your on-prem private environments, VMware, Hyper-V, being able to back up to disk-based storage, object-based storage. Then we go up into the cloud, being able to back up, public workloads running in the cloud. A lot of customers are moving away from their hardware-based solutions and putting their stuff up in a public cloud for more of an infrastructure as a service. And just because something's in the cloud doesn't mean that you don't need to back that up as well. Office 365, so these are those more native cloud backups, software as a service and the Veeam availability orchestrator, being able to orchestrate your DR plans, multi-tenanted single pane of glass through this Veeam availability console you see in the middle right, and of course support for physical workloads as well, Windows, Linux, AIX, and we continue to offer more support for different platforms as we see a growing need for those platforms with customers. Now, even though I mentioned the webinar today was about disaster recovery, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about backup briefly as the core essence of our software. And so, backup versus replication in Veeam terms is a backup is just a copy of a bunch of different VM files or even physical machines crunched together. You can think of them almost like a zip file where you put a bunch of your files into one folder, you crunch them all down, we deduplicate, it saves you a lot of storage space. It's great for archiving. Maybe takes a little longer to get up and running, but at least you have that data and it's not taking up so much overhead. Whereas with DR, you have your machines powered off in another location or on another host, ready to go. But with backup, Veeam likes to follow the 3-2-1 rule. That means having 3 copies of your data on 2 different media, with one of those offsite, preferably at phoenixNAP's data centers. And those 3 copies are, you have your production data, so maybe your VMware VMs. Then you have a local backup to maybe a NAS, a Windows box, or even another SAN. And then you have a copy of that offsite with your cloud provider. That way, you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket. It's great to have a backup locally, but what if the whole site goes down, right? And so that's kind of what we're talking about today. So focusing specifically on the replication piece and how Veeam and phoenixNAP work, we see this diagram here. So we start from the left, you have the customer site. Now those little orange guys at the top are Veeam backup and replication instances. That is what's, backing up your VMware environment, or replicating rather. So we're going to take the VMDKs, the virtual machine disks, and we're going to move those, copy those from your location to phoenixNAP's data center. They're going to have something called a hardware plan. And all that means is they've carved out some production storage, compute memory. They've VLAN'd off your own little subnet. You can have up to 9 subnets per hardware plan. And some subnets may have internet access, some subnets may not. But all those hardware plans are created ahead of time, and the customer would create a failover plan ahead of time as well. So that way, whether it's a partial site failover or a full site failover, we're able to give you access to those machines, and they can be up and running in just minutes. Now, I got one last slide, and then I'm going to pass it back over to Bryan, just kind of reiterating that this disaster recovery as a service works off of Veeam replication. So again, replication in Veeam terms is not a copy of a backup. It is a one-to-one copy of the actual VMs on production storage. If you were to go into vSphere, you would see those virtual machines powered off. You could even power them on without Veeam if you had your own private infrastructure. But it's VM-level host-based replication, right? And so we take snapshots, we move those over to your hardware plan that we discussed earlier. And here we kind of just see the various components working. We have proxies. And so we don't use agents when we do backups or replicas of VMs. We use a proxy service that talks directly to the hypervisor. We integrate extremely well with VMware, and we will transport those VMs to phoenixNAP's data center, and those will be waiting for you with a one-click failover if you need to power on your entire data center from a laptop. And that's all I got, so I'll pass it back over to Bryan. Thanks.
Thanks, Brandon. All right, and we're about to wrap up, but I'll very quickly go over some of the solutions we have to help you guys achieve high availability. So first and foremost, Veeam Cloud Connect, backup and replication. We can be your offsite target for just straight offsite backups, or for replication with a hardware plan, like Brandon mentioned, associated with compute resources on our side. And with the latest version of Veeam, we've integrated it into our multi-tenant cloud mentioned down at the bottom, Data Security Cloud. It's a VMware vCloud Director-based offering, so it's a very simple to use HTML5 interface for managing your entire infrastructure. It's very robust, and we're happy to do trials. So if you would like to get signed up for that, please reach out. We offer disaster recovery as a service, which is basically the Veeam Cloud Connect replication service. And we also offer a managed backup for Office 365. We recently added support for OneDrive and SharePoint, so it's a pretty full-featured offering, and we're happy to discuss pricing and anything else, any other questions you might have on that one. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but We do have a couple handouts on these solutions available through the GoToWebinar dashboard. There's a couple PDFs there. And also, if you had any questions that you wanted to answer on our solutions, feel free to ask them in the questions box there. And finally, we have a client portal that has the ability for you to manage your Veeam Cloud Connect repositories. So if you needed to increase the repository quota, you don't even need to reach out to anybody. You can do that yourself through our self-service portal. You can open up trouble tickets, check your bill, and soon we're adding in the ability to provision bare metal servers. So it's a pretty robust client portal that's been around a few years. We also have two-factor authentication enabled for the portal, just because we are a security conscious company. And I think I'm going to wrap up there. So again, feel free to ask any questions. I'll stick around for a minute if there aren't any questions, and I'll go ahead and end the webinar. And thank you very much for attending today. Well, I'm not seeing any questions, so you guys have a great rest of your day.